This is a video about the PlaySalo game that took place in the Finnish city of Salo in 2019. This video will be about a 5-day game, let's say a workshop including students of architecture from Tampere School of Architecture and high school students, local high school students from Salo. I'm going to present this game together with Robin, and who was my co-organizer of the game, and Robin, who took part in the game as a student of architecture. Robin, just say hello and say two words about yourself.
Hi, I'm Robin. I'm a PhD student in sociology, and I took part of planning or organizing this course.
And Robin, sorry, Otto.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Otto, and I'm these days third-year student of architecture in University of Tampere. And when I participated this game, I was in my first year.
Excellent. Okay, and this video is focusing on the game itself. There will be another video that talks much more about the background and the context of the game. Good. So we start with university students from Tampere arriving to the smaller town of Salo in the southern part of Finland. At head of the workshop, we asked the students of architecture to make a quick drawing of what they thought about when they thought of Salo. They had to just very quickly draw something and write something. And then the local students were the experts who evaluated the drawings of the architecture students. And what is special about Salo is that it used to be the main production site of Nokia mobile phones. At some point, 6,000 people worked there, and now when we did it in 2019, the game was taking place there. The factory has been closed for several years, so this was, of course, a huge shock for the city of Salo and the whole region. So this was the main story, and this was a drawing that apparently, according to the local high school students, told that story most precisely. We used these orange dots to vote. Otto, I was thinking, how did it feel to become evaluated by these much younger, sometimes high school students?
Well, I think it was quite fun. Sorry about the noise in the back, yeah, but it was quite fun and interesting to see what were the students' reactions. And basically, for this case Nokia, it was very much the same as we did.
And another thing we did the first day was to do some exercises that all kind of either had this perspective, how we perceive space. Here we see, we call it the tunnel vision, how we actually have a very hard time navigating with if we put our hands up and make these sort of binoculars. We also did this different types of sitting in the room, sitting in rows like a classic classroom, sitting in a circle, sitting in small groups, just to show how the organization of space makes a difference to the interaction between the students. I don't know, Otto, did these very practical exercises, did it sort of show how this organization of space makes a difference?
Yeah, definitely. And when, for example, we were sitting in smaller groups, we can really see that the connection between the people and the space is very different than when we are organized in strict lines. And So basically, it's a question of organization, how you organize things and how you fill the space and how do you produce space meanwhile.
Yeah. So simply by being there, we start to produce space. Yeah. I remember you actually said it yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
So after that, so we started in some sort of well-known environment, the classroom. For some of the university students, it was a slightly traumatic experience to come back to that kind of setting. But we left it and went to an old empty or half empty shopping mall in the center of city of Salo. And we did this exploration in that shopping center. Again, the local high school students were the guides, guiding around the blindfolded university students, and also the high school students would write down the observations of the university students. And the whole point was to again talk about perception and how you perceive space using all your senses. I don't know, Arto, how did you experience that?
Well, being blindfolded and analyzing the space you don't know basically shows that it's everything is very visual and it's basically visually a little bit biased because usually we don't pay attention that much all the smells and noises, and for example the noises when you walk, the materials and that kind of stuff. So now we, like, maybe I could say we analyze the best space and our feelings and our senses much more closer and much more like deeper doing this.
Mm. And I remember exactly at this point, what we can't see is that next to where the photo is taken was a hairdresser. So the smell was very much of hairdresser, and at least for some of you, that smell gave you all kinds of memories and associations, and that's what's being written down. What also happened was that this is actually a public space. So just these notes on the wall immediately became part of some sort of conversation about that space. And not far from where the previous picture was taken was an empty space that would be our kind of base camp workspace for the next week or 5 days. And it was very important for me that this talking about changing or designing stuff never became this abstract thing, making nice drawings about something that could happen in the future, but do it very fast and do these immediate actions, appropriations of space. And for that, we have this masking tape. It's an exercise I've done many times, and it is fascinating to see how fast the space transforms. So that was actually all these things. The image of Salo, the drawings with an empty Nokia building, the different spatial exercises, the blindfold exploration of the actual shopping center here, and this appropriation of the workspace. It was all happening in the same day. And it was very much this warming up for the actual game that would then take place the following 3 days. And this 3 days, they will have this progression. It will start with what we can call the personal space, individual body aspects. Next day, the second day of the game, it would be the collective space. It would work with language, how we communicate, but also how we are working in a group. And the third day of this game, it would be the public space. It would work with the more complex, abstract aspects of the urban. The structure for each day of the game would be the same. In the morning, there would be an exploration So the first day it would be this individuals going out and exploring and finding places, especially finding places where they felt that there was an openness for something to happen. So in the morning it's the exploration. In the midday it's the challenge. So one of these findings from the morning is picked as a challenge, and then this challenge is sent to all the others in the group that will then act on that challenge in the afternoon or engage in that. So all 3 days have the same structure. And the first day was then where the students in the morning was asked to find places where they really had this feeling of something new could happen. And this example is an old factory lying next to the river. And it's of course a classic, this abandoned spaces giving you this feeling of, or inspire you to get ideas of something to happen there. This was picked out of maybe 10 or 20 observations done by the same person. This was picked in the midday to produce a new map with one location for each participant. And that one location would then be the challenge that everybody had individually to engage in the afternoon. And the way to engage was to do something using their body to change that location. So if we look at the left picture, it's again this factory, and somebody is doing something that's sort of to change that space. I don't know, Otto, how do you feel this? How did it work? This, let's say, the first day, this personal space.
Well, I think it was very fun to like explore the city with yourself and then make these small interpretations with you with yourself and with your body. And for example, I think it was a fun and different kind of way to see the city and feel the places. Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened was that in the base camp, we would print out each of these, I think it was in the end 31 locations that were picked as a challenge the first day. So that formed sort of the core of collages that would grow over the 3 days. So it was a very sort of non-high-tech sort of mapping exercise, one could say. We would print out everything and glue it to these collages, and they would grow. Here we can see. So first it was the challenge, and then based on that challenge, the way people would engage in doing sometimes very silly things in those locations. And then at the end of the day, we would use these orange dots again. We saw it the first day, also in the classroom with the high school students evaluating the images of the university students. So we would always get some sort of indication in this very rough way what kind of actions were actually more important than others. I think there's one more. We could see that this using the body in different ways clearly was a popular way of interacting with or engaging with the space. So the next day we went from the individual to the group. So we would form small groups, and we would then also, in a way, quite naturally introduce language, meaning that the small groups would first go around and find some of the locations they already picked the day before and put words to it. I don't know, how did it feel to go from expressing yourself, doing stuff with your body, to using words? Otto, did you did it work, or how was that?
Well, it worked, but it was very different. And when we were in groups, we had to make some discussion and change opinions. What were the words that would fit perfect? And for example, difference between the architecture students and the high school students in Salo was sometimes very big, because some things we find interesting and nice, and we get nice and respectful words about them. The locals were like, what is this? This isn't cool. This isn't nice. It's stupid. And yeah, well, the group is also a very important thing, that it changes this. But yeah.
And that was the whole point, also to combine language with the collective space, meaning also the dynamics in the group. I don't know, Robin. We had a discussion later in the day about that, but maybe we bring it up now.
Yeah, so the group dynamics, we also discussed it in the or presented different things for the participants to keep in mind, because of course it was quite a unique setting to have university students and high school students, and also having these local students who had information about how they have been using these different spaces in Salo. They have been going there since they were kids, most of them, so they had a different relationship to the city. And then you had the architect students who had a different way of looking at space, seeing possibilities and different kind of things that the high school students couldn't see. But at the same time, they also had there was a risk of having a kind of maybe the high school students being more silent, or otherwise also some students being kind of not taken in and participating in the group as much as possible. So we try to engage that in the groups to make them conscious that there are different roles, and it's natural for people to take different roles in groups, but at the same time taking a kind of a leading role, for instance, comes with responsibility of making other people also heard in that group. Yeah, so that was important, I think also from another perspective, that they got to think about how to work in groups with people with different backgrounds.
Yes, and that discussion then fed to writing stories, and again it was part of this exploration in the morning with the keywords that we just saw, and then finding some challenges, and then the group should pick up the challenges and engage by writing a more like a text that we can see here. I don't know, I don't speak Finnish, but when I put it into Google Translate, I could see that a lot of these sensory observations and this very strong perception of space actually filtered into these stories. I don't know how this writing process felt for you, Otto.
Well, the whole process was quite like expressive, and all these words we are using and the sentences we are using are almost like some kind of painting because they are so filled with expressions and the feeling and the atmosphere. So it was kind of fun also try to like reduce the space in just words and describe it just with the words, because now there is no pictures involved in these texts, and we're trying to give it the honest possible way to describe the space and the feeling. It was interesting.
Robin, do you have some comments? I think you read most of the texts.
Yeah, I think at this point also the students expressed different kind of ways of creating narratives about these different places, and there was this kind of story element that kind of like. I think that also has a creative potential in the sense that when you start creating a story around some space, you don't know where that story is going to take you. So it might open you to look at the space from a different perspective. And it was really nice to read these stories that had really imaginative ideas about what that place could be, how it could be used, but also what could happen there, and these kind of things. So I think it really was nice to see how taking new elements into the game resulted in more this kind of well, yeah, new ways of seeing it.
Okay, so that was the second day of the game, introducing language, discussing the dynamics of the group. I think that's what we're doing here. And then the third day of the game is we kind of go up in complexity and scale and more abstract aspects. We talk about the public space, and here we try to imagine going into a time machine. So we still work with the same locations that we choose some of the locations that we picked already, and go deeper into how they were produced, looking back in time. So that was the exploration in the morning, asking people on the street, looking into archives online and finding pictures of how it used to be, but more importantly, reflecting on the processes, who took the decision, what kind of economy was in it, those kind of aspects. So clearly we go from this body space, the first day, very intuitive, sensory, to the social, and then the third day is this much more complex and abstract space. And based on the challenges, so now we are down to, I think, only 4 locations. The poor architecture students were allowed finally to do some drawings. The problem here was that they were supposed to draw or work with ideas for actual interventions into the public spaces. But here we were just trying to get all the ideas out in the open. How did that work, in your opinion, Otto?
Well, actually, it was quite hard for us students to like bring all the stuff from previous days to this point where we began to draw and like design things. And well, it was a hard thing, but it was also a very fun thing. And I bet many of the students were expecting that when we can do the designs, and they were like, there is some big glass structures in these photos we are seeing, and but it was fun, and it was also this dreaming and fantasy aspect that if we have all the money in the world, and what would we do there, and how would we improve the place. It was an interesting part, and also a very hard part for me, at least.
Also, that this would be the very first ideas, and that would, in a way, finish the collages, and we would immediately exhibit them in this sort of atrium where we had been working the whole week, or the first day of first 4 days. So this is how the result of the game looked to the public passing through this half empty shopping center. So this is the end of the 3-day game. But then Friday, so the 5th day of the whole thing, we would form new groups. First, we let the local high school students put dots where they thought it was interesting to do something, and then the architecture students did the same. And then we tried to form some groups and locations based on this common interests. And these groups would then do some sort of prototyping, doing stuff on location that would, so this was, we invited a small public to be part of it, and worked with different ways of getting some new ideas on location, asking into questions the groups might have. But do it in a way that that in itself also was a part of a change to the location. I think this little performance where we would run around on the public square, the marketplace in Salo, shows it quite well. And this is one example of the work of one group. Again, we are at this old factory at the river that we have been seeing a couple of times. As I said before, the point was actually not to produce these kind of classic drawings that you do in schools of architecture and when you work as an architect, but actually build such interventions based on this 5-day deep exploration of the place that we couldn't fit into the semester plan for the students. But also, I don't know if you can say how this 5-day exploration and this, especially this last day of being much more concrete, discussing on site what could be done there and doing it in a performative way. How did that work for you?
Well, I think the last day was one of the most interesting ones in the whole week, because there was this public and this debate and discussion going on, and it also bring this like user experience in the city also alive. And yeah, it was interesting, and I think it was one of the main things for me from that week, where I can. And now I can use the same methods and the same thinking that I learned from there in my current work and current projects I'm doing and that kind of stuff. So it was very important, and also the idea of listening to people and intervening with them and discussing is very important, but also I think we don't highlight it as much as we could.
Okay, and then Robin, we did some surveys asking the students in this more sort of quantitative way what they thought about the workshop and the game. The first question was about the experiential learning method. It was very much, you know, trust your feelings, Luke, if you have Star Wars present. In the sense that we would really go out and sense the place first, and then use that experience to discuss and then add more theoretical layers to it. I don't know if you have any comments, Robin, on that one.
Well, as we can see, all students who participated in the survey rated it quite highly as a successful element in this game. And I think for a lot of students it was kind of breaking the idea of how a course can look, and being used to sitting in a classroom and stuff like that. it can make you quite close-minded in some ways, and then when you're in different settings, I think this is one of the things that also came up in the interviews we also did with the participants after the course.
Mm. And we talked a lot about the game, but as we can see here, it also was perceived very positive. And what I especially like is this, that the people highlighted this feeling of freedom to be creative. I don't know, Otto, can you expand on that? Maybe put it into perspective of how you usually do stuff.
Well, yeah, usually when, for example, we do some kind of project, we have all these maps and this stuff behind it, and it's always in the same pattern, same method. First sketches and then some modeling and more maps, and well, it's quite of, yeah, the pattern is very clear and very strong one. So this whole week basically breaks the pattern and gives space for different kind of designing methods and different kind of things to get to know for the subject of design. So yeah, I can agree with this freedom to be creative, and that game method brings more freedom in a way.
Yeah. Robin, do you have comments on that? Or you can also refer to the interviews you talked about before.
Well, I think in the same way as the last element as well, the experimental method overall, I think that this is a part of that, and I think that making it somehow a game, making it more active, and making them also the producers of that game was something that gave them self-reliance on their own creativity, in a sense, instead of also in terms of what the boundaries were, what to do. Kind of there were boundaries, of course, but it was possible for them to do a lot of things, be quite spontaneous in creating something or thinking of something.
And I think it's interesting because, on the other hand, the game itself was extremely tightly coordinated or designed. You know, it was really like, now we do this, now we do that, and but the whole point was that it would then open up, but just in a very different way. Yeah. I think we had a couple of more. Yeah, the base camp in Linuri, we were really like being on location and having this workspace in this half empty old shopping center. In itself, a symbol of the situation in the city of Salo, where you had lots of empty shops, but this empty shopping center was quite extreme. Also, how did it feel for you to kind of work on location?
Well, I think the Linuri, like this one sentence said, it was described as the problems of Salo, and also we were it was basically in the city center and close everything. So, but in other sense, it was also half abandoned and half empty. So yeah, I think it was a good thing to work there, that we had worked for the high school or some fancy new studios. So yeah, it was great, and it was very easy access to everywhere, and it helped us to explore the city very good.
Yeah, and that's the next thing, this working like on location, in, with, and for Salo. So could you take this experience from the first day, this feeling of simply by being there, physically present, you start to to change space. Did that sort of also influence the way you experienced and interacted with the more public spaces of Salo? Also, how was that experience?
Well, yeah, definitely. And when you are personally in that space, the feeling of that space is very different compared to not being on site and not thinking it as the same way. And I think we architects should more be on site and not just make 1 or 2 visits, because it also in the public space, that if you visit there and be there and feel the place, see it, experience it, it has a big impact and lots of effects.
Do you have some comments, Robin, from your interviews?
Well,
I remember you also interviewed the high school students. They are not part of this survey. This survey is asking the university students only. So do you remember some of the feedback from the high school students?
I remember that they really liked the element of walking around in the city and experiencing things directly there. Of course, I mean, I don't know if they put it into specifically, you know, I don't remember them actually talking specifically about like hearing sounds and stuff like that, but they as far as I remember, they were talking about the kind of that it was significant to be present and yeah.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Otto. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a second video that talks much more about the context, the background, and also the future based on these experiences. Because after we did this 5-day game, we arranged a symposium in the same space as the base camp in this half-empty Linjuri Surfing Center in Salo. So that would be a good reason to see the other video called PlaySalo Context.